came over from the Karen Reed show that I just had. Welcome back. For those that didn't catch it, go check it out afterwards if you're interested in that type of discussion. I think I had a pretty good show and a good uh, explanation of some of the evidence in the Karen Reed case that might change some people's minds in certain things. So make sure you guys goes and check that out. Before we get into today's show, I do gotta remind you guys of a couple things. First and foremost, our partnership with DataSeal. If you have any concerns with your private information, whether it be your name, address, phone number, religious preference, voting preference, I know that's important to some folks, and you're worried about that getting out there in the interwebs, check out DataSeal. Get a 5% discount when you use the link, and they'll expunge all that stuff off the interwebs. Also, guys, don't forget the Idaho House Bill 37 t-shirts. I'm wearing mine. Get yours. The description is in the link. The G's wear theirs. As you can see, this is what it looks like from the front. Firing squad unit on the back. Don't want to miss it. They're going to be here for just a short time longer. So make sure you guys go and get yours. So without further ado, today's topic and conversation, we're going to bring back a fan favorite, Dr. Jamie Vona. How's it going, Doctor?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Another day above ground, so I can't complain. You know what I mean?
There you go. Good. Sounds good.
Yes, yes. So, it's been a minute, that I've talked about the Bryan Kohberger case. Took a couple days off for the weekend, and then on Mondays, in full disclosure, I talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Dr. Bona's favorite football team, every Monday night. A show called The Hangover with Shannon White. So that's why I don't do any true crime. That's on Still Current Network. But since then, there's been some documents and some things that have been dropped, and I wanted to get your opinion on certain things. The first one is we're seeing a motion to continue. Now, they're using a lot of reasons behind this motion to continue, and this is the defense, that is. And one of the reasons is the sheer amount of evidence. Another is the time constrictions, the fact that they also have to do a penalty phase because this is a death penalty case. There's a penalty phase aspect to it. They don't feel like they're prepared for it, and also because of a Dateline leak. Now, we have here a notice of a hearing that's going to be occurring on June 18th. June 18th, we're going to find out what the decision is on the motion to continue. There's also a motion that's going to be not sealed. It's going to be open to everybody, so we're going to be covering it live here. There's also going to be a motion for alternate perpetrators. But on the motion to continue, if you put it on your Swami hat and you wanted to do some predictions here, what are you thinking? Do you think that it's going to be denied? It's going to move forward with the motion to continue? A lot of the things that were brought up before. So, long story short, Dr. Judge Hippler had already made some rulings on some of these things, referencing the the death penalty. So the defense was trying to get some of the same reasonings as far as the motion to continue to be some of their same reasons for the the cancellation of the death penalty, to drop the death penalty. And he was very forward about his opinions on some of the things, talking about how much of the evidence is irrelevant. So I think that in the end, I think that this is going to end up being something that's not, I think it's going to be denied, mainly because majority of the reasonings up until the Dateline, judge has already shot down. Now the Dateline stuff, I've talked about it briefly before. I don't really think there was a lot there that was out that we weren't aware of. Now there was some shock, added there as far as the sounds of the audio from 50 feet away. But we were told what those sounds were. We were told that he driven by there, had been in the area at odd hours of the times, 23 times, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Now, those are the times that they're alluding that Bryan Kohberger was there and that there was some maybe nefarious attempt or nefarious reasoning behind it, given the fact that there was an odd hour behind it. Now, there may have been other times he was out there, and it may not have just correlated with those odd hours, but I mean, if he's out there at 3, 4 in the afternoon, there is shopping and stuff that can be done. All right. And so, to me, I think it's not going to be anything. Now, the motion for alternate perpetrators. Now, this one is sealed. Now, this was sealed by the defense team, from what I understand and everything that I've written. So from what I understand, is they're the ones that want to seal this. I know that some people think maybe perhaps it was the judge that wanted it to be sealed. I'm thinking that either way, if the judge and or if it's either the judge and or the defense team that are wanting this to be sealed, that tells me that either or both think that it's probably going to be denied. How's it going, Doctor? Let's see.
I'm
I'm
praying.
praying.
Daniel, I don't
I
know
don't know
what
what
it is.
All right, now you're back.
Fingers crossed. Did it work?
I think so.
I think so.
All
Thank
right.
God.
Well, I think I know what it is. I think it's because I was doing the screen sharing. So I'm just going to have to read when we talk versus doing the screen share. It's not a big deal. So do you think that the motion to continue is going to happen?
The motion to continue? No, I hope not, because not for nothing, but I feel like we need to take the victims' families into consideration. These parents are going through hell in the families, and I feel like they're not going to be able to start the grief process until we go through this trial. So I feel like the more, what is it, justice delayed is justice denied. I feel like it needs to go on. I don't know if my need or thought is going to really be real, but I would hope that the judge would consider that.
Yeah, I would hope so too. Hold on, I'm hearing that my audio is low, so give me 1 second.
As long as it's not echoing.
You know what? I think
Oh, wait, you sound good.
There it is. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody's assistance. Alrighty. So, what about the alternate perpetrators? This is sealed. Does this tell you that this is probably going to get denied?
I hope so. They better have some real evidence if they're going to accuse somebody.
That's true. That is true. And I think that obviously I don't think they have it, and I think this is going to be denied. I think this is going to go forward as relayed. There's been some hints out there. You know, the judge has posted up that telling the media to be prepared for August 4th, August 11th, and those are the dates that are already there. And so because of those, I strongly suspect that he's going to be it's going to be on time.
I'm also hoping he doesn't allow like the name of whoever it is that they're like, unless there's something that's really tying the person. I hope that like that's something I would want sealed, because again, that could ruin somebody's livelihood.
That's true. That is true. You know, the rest of the stuff isn't really a lot. They have a motion to seal the parties' proposed stipulated jury instructions, which I think is going to have some more information because of the Dateline leak. What do you think about the Dateline leak? Do you think that is something that's going to end up biting the prosecution in the rear? Do you think?
Well,
I mean, I think a
feel
lot
like
of it we know.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that if you look at the first Dateline, I went back and rewatched the first Dateline, and I feel like we got some more like evidence to back things up, but I don't feel like there was really anything in there that we were like, get out. I mean, other than the pictures and stuff, I guess we weren't, I mean, at least I wasn't expecting that, but I was expecting the car and the surveillance and all that. I was expecting all that already. So I kind of knew they had that. It was just we got to see it. And not for nothing, I feel like there's enough people out there that don't know about the case yet. I talk to my students about it all the time, and they're psychology students, and they don't all even know about the case. So I turn a lot of them onto it, but I don't know. I feel like there's enough people out there to do this. Like, we need to get this done.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that the Dateline really wasn't more. You know, I look at the 911 call, right? So the 911 call got released, and it got released after the transcript of the 911 call. And because, well, the transcript's out there, we know what's being said. Now, when it came to the audio and the video from 50 feet away, for instance, we already knew from the PCA that there was a thud, there was a dog barking, there was some whimpers, and the same sounds that we heard. You know, it was just confirmed. I mean, to me, it's what's the difference between the audio and the transcript, and basically the transcript of what you hear in the PCA and actually listening and seeing the video. I don't really see a big difference there.
Sometimes I wonder if he's doing some of this just to like appease the record, so that in case it goes up on appeal, he could say like, well, I did everything. Like, I took this into consideration. We did this, we did that. And do you know what I mean? So sometimes, at least that's what I'm hoping that he's doing, and that he just denies this, because I think it's ridiculous, both things.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think a lot of it is because it was already handcuffed from the previous judge. He's the one that made the non-dissemination order. He's the one that had it so strict, and I think that they're still trying to navigate through those weeds that were created there. Um, a couple of other things, real quick. Motion to seal Exhibit 5 to the defendant's 23rd supplemental request for discovery. Doesn't really tell us much about what that is. And there's also the defendant's 23rd supplemental request for discovery, but it was sealed, so we don't know exactly what it is.
Do you think that the prosecution's going to get a chance to have him evaluated psychologically at any
Oh,
point?
yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
I
they
think
will?
they already did. I think they may have already done that.
Could that be why Anne doesn't want them to say sociopath or psychopath?
No, I think that the reason why she doesn't want him to say that is because of the searches that Bryan Kohberger made. He made the searches for, can psychopaths be
Behave
something?
prosocially.
Yeah, and then can sociopaths and college students, something to that effect. So he used those two specific terms in his searches, and I feel like that goes a lot of the ways to his mental status, to what he was thinking about himself, and his self-realization of who he was and who he was becoming, which was this monster. And I think that the defense is trying to limit that amount of negative exposure with those terms that he was trying to self-diagnose himself with.
And for people that don't know this, we did the Google Trends over at my channel and we found it. So, and I know that you're probably like, people might be thinking like, oh, well, how'd you find a Google trend? But because if you look at it and you watch it, I teach statistics. So I was, especially the Papa Roger stuff, and then the stuff with the stuff that they said he looked up. We found it coming from Washington. It wasn't coming from any other state. It was coming from Washington, and it was coming during those exact time slots. So I think that was really interesting, and it gave us an opportunity to look it up ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chloe brings up an excellent point, saying his appellate attorneys are going to be different as well. Yeah, I'm gonna bring up this. I wanted to share this, and then I wanted to get your opinion. But since I do have to share it and share the audio, that's probably going to make an echo. So I'm just gonna mute us while we play it, and then we'll talk about it after.
Cute.
The Iowa college murders. How long ago was
Can
that?
this timing data be used in the Iowa college murders? When was that case?
Yeah, I want to make
don't
sure
know.
we're talking about the same one because I might be confusing it with another set of murders in Iowa.
But technically, yes. Had the agency gone out and got the records in time before the end of their shelf life?
Yeah, let's talk about shelf life really quick. So one challenge that does come up with timing data is the retention period. How long the phone company keeps these records changes dramatically. So with regular phone records, which is cell tower information, I can usually go back a year. So let's say a crime is committed January 1st. I don't figure out who the suspect is until August 1st. I can still go back and get the phone records from January 1st. With timing data, depending on the carrier, that data may be purged. So it's really important to look at when did they figure out who the suspect was? And by the time they figured them out, they had probable cause to get the records. Were the records still being maintained by the phone company, or had they already purged?
So they happened the week before Idaho. So let's say that they happened the week before Idaho. The agency did not get the records.
The question is, when did they identify the suspect? Because I can't, let's say that, Heather, let's say you're my suspect, right? And you commit a crime January 1st, and I'm going to use T-Mobile. And I could be wrong on this because it changes from time to time, but let's just say, hypothetically, T-Mobile has a 90-day retention period. Crime is committed on January 1st. Technically, I have roughly until April 1st to get the data for January 1st. Well, if I don't figure out Heather's my suspect until April 15th, and I go write the search warrant and I hit T-Mobile up, T-Mobile can give me January 15th up to the current date, but they're not going to be able to give me January 1st because those records have already been purged. So I would have to look at that case to see when the suspect whose records we would be going after was identified.
Let's talk a little bit about a preservation letter.
I still need to know what to preserve.
Well, right. But let's say that Heather was a suspect, though.
Oh, let's say
And-
somebody said, hey, I think Heather did this and I have really good reason to. And then I, as a police officer, looked at Heather. I'm like,
But you
she
don't
does
have-
look pretty guilty.
But you don't have probable cause yet to write the search warrant.
Right.
You can request that the provider preserve Heather's data. Maybe we don't have probable cause yet, but we have a pretty good idea that she is the suspect. A preservation letter would allow the law enforcement agency to go in and actually have that preserved and not pushed off the shelf.
Whatever. That's what we call the shaggy defense.
It wasn't me. Yeah.
I wonder what they call the Bryan Kohberger alibi. Oh, wait, never mind. They're on his defense team. Yet
Period.
that wasn't me. So the reason I bring this up is he seems very well informed and knowing that there's a limit to the retention of timing, call advanced timing records. Did you not grasp
Yeah,
that as well?
that's definitely what I got. And I guess because it like overwrites the data. So then there's really no way to go back. It's not like on the cloud, it gets overwritten. So that's interesting. Do you know in this case if they got the suspect? I feel, didn't they? Yeah, because December, they got him December 30th. So that was in
So
the,
AT&T's advanced timing advanced records only held at that time for 7 days.
oh yeah, that's right. You interviewed that guy.
Well, that and there was some there were some documents, and it calls him a conspiracy theorist. And some people were, where I saw this from, were claiming, oh man, the guilters thinking he's a conspiracy theorist. The judge called him a conspiracy theorist because of what he was saying, and another judge called his work junk science. So I don't think those are things you want to be called in open court. I don't think they go to your.
No,
You're not putting that on your resume.
no, especially because didn't he have like a good rapport before this? Like he was like, he had like a good legacy, if you will. And I feel like who just throws themselves at the very end of their career? I don't know.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, he was losing his work with law enforcement. And so,
Oh, what
kind of
better
like
way to
that,
get them back?
right? Kind of like Dr. Russell in the Karen Reed case. Now you're willing to say or do anything for the defense team, and you go out there to a high profile case. So that way you alert the world that you're ready to play game, or at least the defense attorneys that you're ready to play ball. And so that's just my opinion personally. But to me, it sounds like he was well aware of advanced timing records, retention time frames. He said he worked with AT&T for 15 years. I think that's what he put on there. It was a 7-day time frame. The murders happened November 13th, and Bryan Kohberger wasn't a suspect on Moscow Police Department's radar till December 19th, much later after 7 days. So for Cy to attack Nick Balance and the FBI and the prosecution by saying that they for sure had Bryan Kohberger's advanced timing records, knowing he wasn't a suspect until December 19th, what does that kind of say to you about his mind state, or what do you think about the situation?
That says to me when the suspect or whatever, when you can't defend them anymore, you have to defend, like you have to try to break down the system. So I feel like that's where they're at right now. Like there's only so much they could say for him. Like he's got autism, he's got this, he's got that. Eventually, when that stops working, what else do you do as a defense attorney but attack the system? Speaking of which, though, Anne, what about her taking on? Isn't she taking on another death penalty case? And if so, why would that even be allowed?
Well, that's one of the things that Judge Hippler asked her when she wanted to remove the death penalty off of the table because of the workload that she has. He asked her straight up, "Didn't you, take on a secondary death penalty case? If you had a problem with the workload, why would you do that?"
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the end of the day, this trial is going to end up happening August 11th.
I hope so. I think so too. I really do. Because again, now that she's on another case, you're just going to keep delaying this trial. And then when 6 months comes, you won't be ready then either. And then a year, she's never going to be ready. It's just time to do this. And he's already cleared out his calendar. So I think that's like a big thing for a judge. When you like put it on the calendar, I think that's like next level. That's like, so they really don't like to go against that unless it's like absolutely needed.
Yeah. No, I agree. Mm-hmm. Hey, your audio is working while I shared this, but I'm not sharing the audio. So I think we figured it out. All right. So I wanted to get your idea on some of the things that were mentioned in this Guardian article, and get your opinion based on your experience and your expertise on some of the things that are said here. Sure. I'll go through it. I'm just going to read the highlighted parts. It says here, Bryan Kohberger, accused of killing the young University Idaho students in 2022. Last week, Kohberger's attorney requested a trial delay, citing in part intense publicity around the case, generated in part by a recent NBC Dateline special they claim was prejudicial to their client because it contained apparent prosecution leaks in violation of the non-dissemination order. The leaks include information of the phone belonging to Kohberger connected 23 times in 4 months to a cell phone tower near the rented home where the 4 students were killed. Also, he searched for the internet for information about serial killer Ted Bundy, as well as pornography with the keywords drugged, sleeping, and passed out. Further problems may arise in July with the pretrial publication of Idaho 4 by the crime writer James Patterson and journalist Vicky Ward. So there's going to be some more things that are going to be brought up. Guys, I'm going to read that book.
I am too.
I'm going to try to get them on the channel, James Patterson and Vicky Ward. I might have a little bit of a connect that might be able to get them on the channel. So I haven't solidified that yet, but that's my goal. That's one of the goals, is to get these guys on the channel. I've had Howard Bloom, who's written on the topic, to get one
Maybe
of these guys.
you'll
Would
get
be
like
great.
a pre-copy.
I hope so. I'm going to reach out to one of my
That thing.
contacts.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be. All righty. So this goes on to say Idaho Judge Stephen Hippler has set an open appointment and special prosecutor to question people under oath to determine the origin of the leaks. But whether or not a delay is granted, a number of recent court rulings have been going against Kohberger. Amazon records show that the account under Kohberger's name and email address bought the K-Bar knife sheath and sharpener back in March of 2022. A brown leather K-Bar knife sheath was found, police said, next to one of the victim's body, and the DNA on the class matched Kohberger. Absent from prosecutors' filings to date are any attempts to ascribe the motive for Bryan Kohberger's alleged actions. And I think that's been one of the biggest question marks. And a lot of the reasons why a lot of folks seem to struggle with, I guess those that call themselves pro-burgers struggle with the motive aspect. Why would he do this? Why would he throw his life away?
Yeah, but somebody did. Somebody did, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's what I always say back to that. But somebody did. So why not him?
Exactly. And not only that, I mean, I know that somebody said that because they were intelligent. I was like, man, intelligence is not an indication that somebody is not incapable of committing a crime. Ted Kaczynski, and I may have said this before wrong, but Ted Kaczynski, he was a mathematical genius. He was a prodigy. He also built a bomb and took the lives of a lot of people. And, he wasn't all there. So just because you're intelligent doesn't mean that you're incapable of committing a violent crime. Anybody and everybody is capable.
If anything, you might be more capable because of your studies.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And then you have the ability to think critically and stuff like that. So if anything, I would argue the opposite.
Exactly. Now, this is where I want to get your opinion. So forensic psychiatrist Carol Lieberman has said she believes Kohberger's decision to study psychology and then criminology was because he was trying to calm the demons inside of him and simultaneously try to learn how to commit the perfect crime. Do you think that his initial intent in psychology was a way to understand himself?
So the short answer is yes. So and this isn't uncommon for many people. So if there's somebody in chat right now that's going to school for psychology, it wouldn't be uncommon, including myself, right? I teach psychology. It's not uncommon for my students to be trying to figure out, or they wind up taking like an intro to psych class and they're like, oh, this is so interesting, but they're finding it more interesting because it's helping them understand their issues. So then they wind up going into it and they take the next class and then the next class. And both of his sisters are in psychology as well. So I don't think that that's a coincidence either. Do you?
I don't. What about the fact that his mother may have been intrigued by Ted Bundy? She wrote about Ted Bundy. There's a image of Ted Bundy or of
The basement.
a mountainside and a scenery of where Ted Bundy may have had, I think he had 2 bodies were found in that area. And then, the fascination of Ted Bundy by Bryan Kohberger. Do you think there could be something there with somebody's mother?
Yeah,
an effect on this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing true crime right now, and there's nothing on my walls that have anything to do with any serial killer. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that's not a coincidence. And then from what I heard, his sister, I forget exactly what it was, but she did something. I don't know if she reacted to something. I don't know, but this was like back in the day that had to do with Bundy too. So I feel like even me, right? I'm interested in Bundy. I don't have a mural of him, but I'm interested in him. So I feel like the average person's interested in the case, but I feel like she takes it a step further. Why does she have a mural and the gnome on the floor? And I don't know. The whole thing is just eerie to me.
Yeah, it is too. It is too. Now, do you think that, I mean, let's just, for the sake of argument, that Bryan Kohberger committed this crime, which for opinion based too.
Mhm.
Do you think that his plan was always psychology, then criminology, or do you think as he understood himself more, he became more interested in criminology?
That is such a great question. So I think if we go back to his TAPA talks, he tells us in his TAPA talks that he feels like a criminal, but wears his record. And that was way before he went to college. So I think he had already identified in some way with that criminal mind. However, psychology is what he goes for at first. So that says to me that he was trying to look at the psychology maybe of himself or criminals or whatever the case may be. And then he got led into, once you're done your degree in psychology, when you go back for your master's, you have to like pick like I did marriage and family therapy. He did, criminal justice. So I think that we wind up like gravitating towards something that interests us most for certain reasons. Again, I went into marriage and family therapy, and I look back now, it's been like over 20 years, and I'm like, wow, back then, I think I went into marriage and family therapy to like figure out my big Italian family, if you know what I mean, but to like figure everything out and like put things together. I really look back and I think that I did that for that. I'm really an educator. So I see myself as an educator more than anything. I just happen to teach psychology. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely
I
does.
obviously am in psychology, but I'm saying like I identify more as somebody who educates others about psychology and abnormal behavior more so than wanting to do it in like counseling. So I think he just found his knack, and that just happened to be criminal justice. And whether that's because he called himself, and then in his song he says that he's the you might be evil, but I'm the devil. Like I think he already had some of these preconceived notions, and that's just where he went, where I went towards the family thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. To me, at least.
I think that makes sense. I think
everybody understood.
Didn't
What about
Bundy
the?
also get his degree in psychology?
I'm not sure. I know he was going for his law degree at one
I
point.
think he got his bachelor's in psych.
That's interesting.
Very.
Now the criminal justice aspect of it. He took a criminal justice or law enforcement class in high school. One of his yearbooks talked about him wanting to be an Army Ranger. The aspirations of being in law enforcement, could that be, I guess, some sort of disguise for actually wanting to be the criminal, as you were mentioning? And or also, when do you think that he started to want to commit this perfect crime?
So I don't think that it's uncommon for people to go into like a law enforcement or a security guard, or if you look at Dennis Rader, he was like the security guard at the church. So I think that there's something to that. Could it be at some point he really was trying to be pro-social? It could be. And then he gets kicked out. So even when he tries to be pro-social, he did something. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he did something to get kicked out. From what we hear, it's something against a female, but I don't know that we know that for sure yet. So until then, I'll just say he did something that got him kicked out. So my thing is, even when he tries to do something pro-social, and I just did a short on this, you guys, I answered his question, can a psychopath behave pro-socially? The answer to that is yes. So you can behave pro-socially. The problem is that if your anger gets the best of you or your ego, that's going to override that pro-social behavior, which is probably what happened in this case. And then he gets kicked out. So could this be him saying like, you guys are wrong about me. I am smart. I can do this. So then he like becomes the best in academics type thing. I think he finds somewhat of an identity in that. But then again, his ego jumps in and it like overrides it. It's incredible to see. But real quick, the pro-social thing, you guys, you can, if a psychopath is going to behave pro-socially, they're doing it on purpose to manipulate you. So they're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart, where you might be doing it out of the kindness of your heart.
Makes sense. And so, do you think that the urge to commit the crime came before the criminal justice classes, or
I do.
during?
I do. I think that at least the where's my, I feel like a criminal, but where's my record? I think that he was identifying somewhere in that at the beginning. I also think, and Daniel, you were a cop, right? So he did that whole time of when he was using drugs. during that time, don't we find out that he like steals his sister's phone? Even buying drugs would technically be illegal, right? So who knows if he bought some and then distributed to friends? Like, we don't know, right? So could that have been like the beginning of his criminal behavior? Because I think like sometimes even ourselves, we might have done something that might have been criminal, like run the red light or something, but we just haven't gotten caught. So how many things did he do that he didn't get caught?
Right. What about like self-manifestation, like him thinking so much that he is this psychopath or could be this sociopath that he, self-fulfilling prophecy, self-manipulated, became what he was worried about since it was in his head so much?
I think he lacked an identity, and he felt that this would give him his road to identity. And I think he knew that we would all be interested in this because he is a criminal justice major. Like maybe he, I just think that he like got so close. He could have been Kathleen Ramsland, and he turned out to be, the BTK person on the other side. So my thing is like, had he thought this through, he could have still made a name for himself, but he could have done it on the other side. So there was obviously something, whether it be ego or that, impulsivity, whatever the case may be, that drove him to just say, F it, I'm doing it. Which is why that's one thing with like him driving around in circles. I don't think he was trying to muster up the courage. I genuinely think he was waiting for somebody to shut a light off, or he was waiting for DoorDash to leave. So it is my opinion that he had no anxieties there, you guys. They do feel anxiety, like somebody that, and again, this is alleged, so somebody with antisocial disorder would feel anxiety, but differently than us. So it wouldn't be like fear. So if you look at even like Ted Bundy things, there's been times where he was pulled over by the police and he had like something very incriminating in the trunk and they never looked. So they have the ability to be charming and to like compartmentalize. That's the word I'm looking for. They compartmentalize so that it's like, okay, now I'm in this role, next I'm in this role.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Especially with the Ted Bundy one, their ability to put up a mask and not be afraid or fear. That is that's telling.
I watched a woman that looked back, and she said that she realized that she had run into Ted Bundy once on like the beach, and she said that first he asked if she would take a ride with him, and she said absolutely not, and then he said, will you at least walk me to the car? And she said no, but she said, looking back, had he have asked first, will you walk me to my car, like on his crutches, she might have said yes to that. So she's like, but that's where a psychopath will mess up, is that he went for like the big part instead of being like, something less. Like it didn't occur to him, like, what, don't you think that's going to be scary to a 14-year-old? She was like 14 or 15 at the time. So obviously she was like, not obviously, because some people would go, but she was like, no. But that weirded her out so much that she didn't walk him to the car. That makes me wonder, like, could you imagine if she did? Like, that's just terrible. That's like horrifying.
That is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So the Guardian goes on to say, arguing that the bloody crime scene and the use of a knife was evidence that Kohberger harbored rage against young women. Now, if we were to break down what the evidence is and what we've heard from the Dateline leaks, we know that from what Steve said is that Kaylee had different injuries than what Maddie had. The defense wants us to believe there's two different weapons. I think it's the same weapon used in two different manners. It's kind of like, if somebody got pistol whipped and they got pistol whipped in the wrong part of the head and it kills him, and somebody's saying, well, that doesn't look like he got shot, so it must not have been a gun. You know what I'm saying? It's using the same weapon in a different manner. I think that he may have used the bottom end of the knife to cause some blows that would have been fatal, according to Steve. And apparently, from what we also know, is that she, and I don't want to say backpedaled, but backed into the corner and was sitting up in the corner and had those different injuries. And we also know, based off the Dateline leaks, that Ethan's legs were carved probably after he passed. What does that tell you about the perpetrator? Let's take Kohberger out of it. You have one female, more injuries than another, and then you have the only male having his legs carved.
That says so much to me, you guys. So I'll do the one that I think is like, more straightforward with the legs. I think that Ethan was the type of guy that he couldn't be. So like Ethan was the one that did get the pretty girl. Ethan was the one. So, and I think I said this to you earlier too. If what you were saying earlier, if we find that to be true, that he was asleep when he got attacked, then that just says to me, if he was able to attack Xana and him not wake up, then wouldn't that be like purposeful that he then, because he could have just walked out, right? And he didn't. So it's like, so I feel like that was rage. And then by carving the legs, that says to me, and again, think of this very literally, like he's cut off at the knees, like he wouldn't be able to physically walk anyway. So I think that there's like a lot more psychology behind that than we even think. As far as Kaylee goes, I think that he was taking his rage out on her. Some people have to understand that when somebody chooses a knife, that's a very personal weapon. And there are some people, we don't know if Bryan is, but there are some people in this case that we call pickerists. So a pickerist is somebody that uses a knife, but they're using it as like an extension of their appendage. So maybe they're not able to, reach a climax type thing in that moment. But that knife is like, it's like a model or like what's the word I'm looking for? Not a metaphor, like a whatever for the penis. Does that make sense? And we call it pickerism. So if anybody wants to look that up, it's called pickerism. So we might find out that he was a pickerist because we know that other people in this situation, if it was sexually motivated, then I would say we might be looking at something like pickerism as well. But we just have to find out more, I think, first to say that for sure.
But why the legs? Why not the chest, the back? Why the leg?
Because the legs, if you think about it, if I cut you off at the legs, you can't walk anymore. So it's like he cut him off metaphorically. That's the word I'm looking for. Metaphorically, he was cut off at the legs. It was like, so he couldn't even get in his way anymore. So physically get in his way anymore. Does that make sense? So it was like, now I'm boss. You can't get in my way. And even if he could, his legs would be incapacitated. So now he can't. I think there's a lot more psychology to this than we've realized.
The term was carved.
Oh, yeah. And he was a runner. Somebody just said that he was a runner. So the legs might have had, that's what I think, that's where I thought about this at first. So thank you for saying that, whoever said that in chat. Him being a runner says to me that his legs, right, and his calves are going to be very important to him. So again, this would stop Ethan in his tracks, even if he were awake, which he wasn't, but even if he were. And again, there's more metaphorical to this than I think we think.
It's weird, it's really weird, because like the legs is just an odd thing. I don't know if it's the thigh. I don't know if it's the hamstring. I don't know if it's the calf. They said leg. You know what I mean? And so
I don't know. Why did I think it was the calf? Did I make that up in my head? I could have made that up in my head because he's a runner. I don't know. Somebody in chat, I'm sure, remembers.
Somebody put on the, I guess it was the one of Facebook's or something of that nature a long time ago, that Ethan's hamstrings were torn up.
Maybe that's where I got that from.
And so that's above the knees. That's the hamstrings. It's the back. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's just weird.
Maybe
I would have assumed he would have.
My muscles, and maybe I think I might have heard hamstrings, and I was thinking calves for some reason. I don't know why. So I guess we don't know where exactly, but either way, it would incapacitate you from walking. So whether it was the hamstring or the calf or whatever it was, it would be at the legs. So it's like he physically can't stand in his way anymore. If I cut you at the legs, you can't stand in my way anymore. He's no longer 6 foot versus 6 foot anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, somebody else had that thought too. Another doctor.
To me though, like, I think the carving of the legs is the last thing that he did, right? I mean, that's whether he went at Ethan and then back to Xana, I think that's the last thing he did. And we know that he sat down for a short period of time. I don't know. I don't.
Says that they said it was the lower legs.
Maybe.
I don't know why I had that in my head, but either way, I think it has the same meaning.
Gotcha.
Do you think he could have carved? Somebody asked, do you think he could have carved something into the legs? Wouldn't that be like, I don't know because I've never done this. But someone said, I think he wrote a message. Wouldn't that be really hard to do? I would assume.
Maybe. I mean, probably not. I mean, flesh and that kind of knife, probably not.
Yeah, I guess.
If you're using straight lines, trying to curve things, maybe not. But, using like a B and a K, let's just say, I doubt that's what it is, but let's just say he put BK on there. It'd be like it'd be a straight line with like 2 triangles for the B, and then the K straight, just 3 straight lines.
Yeah, the K was easy. Yep.
And so it wouldn't be too difficult to do something like that. But yeah, no, that would be weird. That would be weird. So this goes on to say, Kohberger had held his rage since at least middle school when he had a crush on a cheerleader said to have looked like Kaylee Goncalves, only for her to reject him. You know, middle school is what, sixth, seventh grade, eighth grade? You know,
It
he's
has a
20.
lot to do with your life, though. If you're hurt in middle school, like this is when we see a lot of bullying and stuff going on. So you see grown ass adults in their 50s and 60s that still talk about when they were bullied as a kid. And when you ask how old they were, it's usually within the middle school years. So I do think that the middle school years has is like a very sensitive period in someone's development. So being taunted by this girl, I think that's the word they used that I was reading in the Dateline thing. So being taunted by this girl or teased or however you want to look at it, that would have made him, if he was feeling bad about himself as like, you know, changing his body and stuff, that would have really, you know, heightened that times 10. So that could have humiliated him, things like that. And again, this is just alleged. We don't know this, but if you like Dr. Gary, how he talks about the prototype. So that would be, if, you know, in Dr. Gary Bercato's words, that would be the prototype would have been the girl from middle school. And then you find somebody that looks like that person. And this is the thing, when it comes to these killings, there's not like a perfect fantasy. So the person has a fantasy. So the fantasy is good. It's the acting out the fantasy that doesn't always match what the person has in mind. And that could have been what happened with Maddie and Kaylee, and he was taking his rage out on Kaylee because she was in the room.
Makes sense. You know, I think that had a lot to do with it as well. You know, I that's exactly what I had thought. You know, I thought he went straight into there, or I thought that maybe his affection was towards Kaylee. And, you know,
I'm starting to think that a little bit, Daniel, when I've been doing these Google trends, I'm telling you. And again, could it be that, and if you look at the pictures from the Dateline, Kaylee fits more of the, like, if you were to cover everybody's, you know, and again, I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm just saying like he has a type thing, and it's a curvier type body if you look at all the pictures. So that would make sense of Kaylee. I've always thought that it was Maddie, but I then thought about it and I thought, could it just be the type of girl? So the type of girl that you couldn't get.
Let's break this down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
based on the information that we know. So have you ever had roommates?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a dog while you had roommates?
No, actually I have. No, yes, I have. Yes, I have. I did. Yes.
Okay. Now, when you had your dog, when you weren't home or weren't there, did you let your dog just roam around freely throughout the entire house, or did you keep him in your room?
These kings rule this house. So yes, they just roamed around.
Okay. In this scenario, there's 6 roommates, 6 girls. You know, is it possible that when Kaylee wasn't home that she kept the door closed so that Murphy wouldn't roam around? He was a puppy.
Yeah, so this is what I would say. So having roommates, it's funny that you say that because 2 of my roommates had dogs, and they were perfectly, you know, everybody, it was actually a different roommate that had the dog, not me, but everybody was like loving of the dog, including myself. But there was this one roommate who never had animals growing up, and she did not like, so if the dog like went to the bathroom on the floor, like she took it differently than the rest of us did. The rest of us would like clean it up and be like, oh, what the heck, but that would be it. She would get like really upset about it. So I could see, we don't know if anybody, you know, didn't have a dog growing up or something like that, and maybe the dog, so we don't know, that could be a possibility that she shut the door.
Because here's the thing, right? So Dylan wakes up with who she thinks is Kaylee playing with the dog, and then she hears Xana, or who she thinks is Kaylee, going upstairs with the dog and then running back downstairs saying, someone's here. Now, in order for the dog to have gone with Xana, because even the defense agrees that at this time Kaylee's she was no longer alive, that was most likely Xana who had done those things. Now, if the dog went to alert her, that means that door had to have been open. Now, the question is, and we don't know, the answer is, did Kaylee close the door or did she leave it open with the dog there? If there was some roommates who maybe weren't fond of dog hair or dogs or whatever the case may be, I can see her closing the door and leaving him in the room. Now, Bryan Kohberger
Yeah, I could even see her being in the room and then like hearing something and like leaving the room for a minute. No.
She didn't do that because she was the position of where she was and how she got there. She would
Oh,
have
that
had
makes
to have
sense.
been
Okay.
between Maddie and the wall.
I'm glad that
So
you said that. That makes sense.
yeah. So my thought is, Bryan Kohberger allegedly entered this house. He opened the back sliding glass door for Murphy to be outside barking at the same time that the assault is happening in Xana's room. That means that the assailant left the door open when he walked in. So the reason you do that is because the more times you touch the door, the more times you have a chance to leave back DNA. So you leave it open. So there's already a small, very minor, but an MO there. This guy touches things as often as he possibly can. So if he opened the door to Kaylee's room, let's just say Kaylee was the objection, right? What he was looking for.
Yep.
That would have been the first door on the staircase. The very first door up the stairs is Kaylee's room.
Oh my God, that makes total sense, Daniel, because then you could see why he gets so rageful because she wasn't in the room like she should have been. Not should have been, but in his mind, or like he fantasized.
Right. So he opens the door. She's not in there. He leaves it open.
Yes.
Turns around, goes to Maddie's room, finds her committing the crime. That's when Murphy runs down to Xana's room. Xana's like, what's going on? Gets up, probably feels the draft also from the backsliding glass door open, maybe sees it as she's walking up the stairs, maybe also hears the commotion that's happening and says, I think someone's here. Turns around, runs out. Difference is Murphy runs outside. She runs back to Ethan. Bryan Kohberger follows her to Ethan's and attacks her. Then he attacks Ethan. Then he goes back to Xana, and this is when he's like, it's okay, I'm here to help. And then, part of me was thinking, was he stopped in the middle of something? Did something happen? Was he, when he was doing this carving thing, was he going to leave some sort of symbol? Was there something happening that he was interrupted by? Now, there's been rumors and speculation that supposedly Dylan may have yelled out, be quiet, or something to that nature. Now, if he is fully concentrated and somebody yells out a 2-word thing, the guy's probably going to be like, holy smokes, what was that? He's probably going to hear it, but not comprehend it. And so he doesn't know. He hasn't checked the first floor. Somebody's awake. Somebody's probably calling 911. He knows how far the police is. So he has to get out of there regardless if he sees somebody else or not. There was supposedly, according to the defense, some sort of evidence of a cleanup. He was definitely doing something. What do you think?
So he probably was changing like his shoes, not his shoes, but like the underneath. So whether he had booties on or whatever he had. So because unless there is a trail, but if not, they wouldn't have had a latent print, right? They would have had like footprints and they didn't. So that says to me that he had to have done something, whether it be like change booties or whatever before he left. So I do agree with that. The other thing was with the dog real quick, somebody just made a good point that the dog was found in Kaylee's room. But I think that both things could be true, that the dog could have went outside and then migrated back to Kaylee's room eventually.
The dog was in Kaylee's room, but the door was open to the back sliding glass door and to Kaylee's room. So that's what was written in the documents, that they found him in the room with the door wide open, and they were like, why didn't he go into Kaylee's room or Maddie's room, because that door was also left open?
Yeah, what do you think?
So you have the back sliding glass door left open. You have Xana's room left open. You have Maddie's room left open. I'm starting to think that Kaylee's room was opened.
Oh, for sure. I do.
And it was left open just like the other one. I think that was an indication of where he was that night. It tells me which doors he opened.
You made such a great point, pointing that out, because it didn't occur to me before you said that. I think that her door would have been shut with the dog, because especially if she was in Maddie's room, she probably didn't want the dog to just roam around or whatever. So she probably did shut the door behind her. I mean, she probably had a bed that the dog could sleep on. So she was like, but that's a good point, that maybe he opened her door first and didn't see her. I think that's a great point, Daniel. I never thought about that. And I actually agree with you, which then says, was Kaylee the target? But then again, I keep going back to, does it matter? Because I think it was more the kind of girl that he couldn't have. That was his target. Does that make sense?
I think all the girls in that apartment were the kind of
Exactly.
girl he couldn't have.
Exactly. No, exactly. But I think that one of the reasons he might have stopped, if he compared himself against Ted Bundy, and again, this is just a legend, but Ted Bundy, he attacked 4 and 2 died. So this would say to me, and he did it under a certain amount of time. He was only in that sorority house for a certain amount of time. If Bryan was doing if he was looking at this scientifically and he was trying to beat Bundy, then he would have to get out of there in a certain amount of time. And maybe he wanted to, make sure all 4 were killed so that in comparison to Bundy, he killed 4, Bundy killed 2, even though he attacked 4 and still got out faster than Bundy. I really think that had something to do with his thought process more, or he just didn't see Dylan, in my opinion. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, even if he did, I think that if he saw somebody and somebody saw him that it was alert and awake, there's no way of him knowing if that person called 911. Police
Or
could
if
be
they
on their
had
way.
somebody in the room with her.
That, and I mean, he may have already started the changing process.
That is true. And that would have put more evidence.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a lot of reasons why. I'm not sure, which one. Got a few more paragraphs, and then I'm going to answer some of the questions. If you guys have questions, put a couple of stars. This goes on to say that Louis, man, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this. Louis Schlesinger, a professor of psychology at John Jay College, said Kohberger alleged crime was a targeted mass killing, not a serial killing, because there were 2 others in the home at the time, including a surviving roommate who reported seeing an intruder with bushy eyebrows who were not attacked. We don't know. I mean, obviously, Bethany, she's blonde. I think Dylan was also blonde too at the time. How do they not fit what he's looking for? Maybe was Dylan too tall? Maybe
no. It's by definition. So by definition, like the way that we look at it in the field, it would be considered a mass murder, and that's opposed to a spree killing. So a spree killing would be if he would have left and then went to somebody else's house and did something there. That would be a spree killing. So this was considered a mass murder by definition. It's kind of like the stalking thing. How it's not stalking, but it's surveilling. This here, I think, in my opinion, had Kohberger gotten away with this, that he would have 1,000%, in my opinion, done it, or whoever did this, I think would have done it again. Therefore, because it's separated by a down period and it would be more than 2 people, then it would fit into serial killing. So for people listening, this is more of like a technical term, and he just might not have been considered a serial killer yet because he might not have ever gotten to the next crime. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think he was actually trying to with the searches on the K-bar knife. This goes on to say this seems to be situationally based. So you can rule out psychosis or impulsivity. And it doesn't appear to be sexually motivated. It could be jealousy or feeling rejected of humiliation, but really we do not know what the motive was. What do you think about ruling out psychosis and impulsivity?
So I think that's funny because he literally says what I was saying before. So ruling out impulsivity, this is the thing. So if he wants to go with the defense that, I don't know. I don't know that we could rule it out, because how can we say whether it was impulsive or not? That's more getting into somebody's thought process. The fact that he said it wasn't a sexual killing and that it might have been for humiliation. I've literally been saying since day one that when a narcissist feels humiliated, it makes them feel really small. And that would be the opposite of feeling grand or grandiose. So the thing that you would do when you feel small is to do something extravagant type thing, to be that godlike figure again. And what other way than to be a godlike figure than to be the arbiter of somebody's life, like whether you live or die. So that could have been like control too, the fact that he let Dylan live. But again, I think it's also important to note that this is all speculation, you guys. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh, she's grasping, or this is all speculation. It could be any of these things. It could have been impulsive. It might not have been. We don't know enough. The thing about the incel theory, I saw somebody write, my only problem with the incel theory is that he did get girls' numbers. So that wouldn't be involuntarily celibate. That would be voluntarily celibate, unless it's just that he can't get the girls that he wants. I don't know, but he did get girls' phone numbers, and that girl that the woman that he worked with, she wanted to date him.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also a difference between, getting the number and sealing the deal. You know what I'm saying? There's a I mean, have you seen that at the Roxbury?
Yes, you're right. Yes.
You know, there's that scene where they're using the pickup lines in the bedroom. They're like, "Yo, this isn't the time for that." You know.
You're right. Yep.
So you know, just he may have been able to, and God knows how much of a mask he could have worked on, you know, for so long. He may have been able to deceive people for an extended amount of time, but I think people picked up on certain things. You know, like the female who was potentially going to go hiking with him. She got his number. They exchanged numbers, but then she didn't respond. You know, she thought that there was something odd in the way that he was texting,
I
and
don't think it
so
was odd.
um,
I don't know. I feel like it was very academic.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe she thought he was a cop or something.
I think she said that like life just happened and she got busy and never wound up like connecting with him
She
again.
said
But
it was too formal. She said that it was too
it was too
formal, and
formal. Okay.
that it was too formal, and that it just didn't feel right.
So a nerd like me would have been like, "Oh, they're academic. I'm hot." So maybe it was just me because I'm an academic. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, he used punctuation on a text message.
I do too. I use punctuation too. My daughters are like, "Mom, you're like a psychopath." I'm like, "Wait, why?"
Well, I've been known to misuse punctuation. I put the parentheses when I mean a comma. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not that bad. All right, let me pull up some of these questions. Kathy Crow asks, Dr. Vona, can you give an insight onto why pro-burgers are so determined to not look at all the evidence against BK? They refuse to consider it valid at all costs. What do you think about the pro-burgers?
I think that they see themselves in him in some way. So not as a serial killer, but as somebody who's been like, you know, the guy that people go after that didn't do it. Like, I think that they're identifying with something in his story and that they want to believe that he's not guilty. And I have to be honest with you guys. I think even if the prosecution gives us like all this evidence, I wouldn't be surprised if there's still a team of pro-burgers out there. So I don't think that the evidence alone is going to change anyone's mind, though it should.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. You know, to me, I think that you make an excellent point that they see a little bit of themselves in them, because they often say it like, it could happen to you, it could happen to me, blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of part of it also is the fact that they see a guy who has accomplished things that they can't, a PhD, you know, a PhD program, a TA, you know, got all these, changed his life around. This is something that a lot of these pro-burgers, they don't see themselves ever doing. They don't, you know, maybe their bar is set a little low. Either way, they think that if I was in that scenario, I wouldn't commit a crime like this. I wouldn't throw my life away. It was the same thing that was said about like Aaron Hernandez or anybody else who's been a prominent figure or a wealthy figure or an intelligent figure or somebody of high status goes out and commits a crime. And they're like, man, if I was in those shoes, I wouldn't do any of those things. I wouldn't be this way or that way. And sometimes people don't realize that maybe the reason they're in those shoes that they are is because of the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for Aaron Hernandez, we have to remember that he had CTA. He had like one of the worst cases that they ever seen. So I think that that might have had something to do with it. But I do agree with you that we see, you're right. If I would never, I don't even get drunk, you guys. Like, I'm such a nerd because I've worked so hard to get myself out of where I grew up and stuff like that, that I don't want to look the wrong way because I don't even want to be accused of anything type thing. I had to take that into consideration when becoming a content creator because I know that there's going to be people out there that might accuse me of this or that. And I have to be able to have a tough skin and like fight against that. So I just think that I do agree with why somebody would think that somebody in his position would never do such a thing. But I also think that that's not enough for somebody. Like, somebody is going to eventually. So again, why not him?
Yeah. STL card says, I haven't read a document on what Bethany said. Well, here's what we know. We can deduce that there was a document that said that Dylan was the only person alive to see the intruder. So this thought that Bethany saw somebody naked or unclothed or any of those things are out the window. So we know that didn't happen. We know that she stayed mainly on the first floor, and there's no indication that the intruder went to the first floor. So it's not really much that we can deduce that she has seen. What do you think?
No, I agree with that. Do we know for sure that she didn't see anything, like, or is that?
Well, the document said that Dylan is the only person alive to have seen the intruder. So if Bethany would have seen the intruder, then that would be two people alive.
Could they have, like, could she have seen, like, oh, I guess you're right, because that would still be the intruder if she's seen somebody like from behind or something where she couldn't identify them, but that would still be seeing them. So I guess I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, even if the intruder was in a car outside or running to the car, that's still seeing an intruder or
You're
seeing
right.
a person. All righty. So Ted Bundy's ghost says, what y'all should be saying is that Kohberger wasn't smart enough to be a serial killer. I think Kohberger thought too much of himself. I think he thought he wasn't going to get caught, and he made a lot of dumb mistakes. You know, the searches, the purchases, those type of things. I think he looked at what catches most people, and because he knew that, oh, you know, I'm going to have my phone off, or I'm going to have this or that those small things were going to protect him, and in the end, that's what his downfall was. What do you think?
I totally agree. And I think he always thought that he was like the better person in the situation, whether he was the smartest in law enforcement or the smartest in his classroom or, you know, even smarter than his teachers. And somebody asked, what do I think about his defense team? I think it's the same thing with the women. I guarantee you, and this is my opinion, but I would be willing to bet money on this, that he disagrees with things that they say, and that he probably, you know, lets them know, like, no, like, I think he's involved pretty much in his own defense. And part of that could be because I don't know that he thinks that they're smarter than him, which is just bananas. Like, I think he thinks that he could put on a better defense than even they could. So I think that he's really involved. And you made me notice before that he no longer sits next to Anne. And I think that's interesting.
No, he sits next to her. They just don't sit very close to him anymore.
Right. They've moved apart. You're right. They've moved apart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, before they were real.
The whole energy's off there. Yeah. I feel like they're like not like jiving the way they used to. But this could also be because I would be pissed if she was my defense attorney and I found out that she was on another death penalty case. Like, that would be like so horrible.
Yeah. The great Gatsby says, he may have a stopwatch that he had set that when it goes off, he has to leave. I'm not sure what that was referring to.
So I think that would be the Ted Bundy thing, that he wanted to do faster than. I think that's what that was referring to.
The Perfect Storm says, so Ann Taylor is due in court September 5th for her other case. If she's in trial and BK, and how is Ann Taylor going to be in two different places at once? That's a great question. I'm not sure how that stuff works as far as the court cases go. Chloe, if you're still in the building, if you could answer that, that'd be great. How is it that she can be two places at once?
The defense indicated that in one of the hearings. Good, I'm sorry.
All right. The defense indicated that if one of the hearings, it was the hearing that they were trying to admit his. Okay, no, that was. What about her having two court cases being brought up at the same time, Chloe? What do you think? Okay, so she's saying the September 5th hearing will get continued. So because of this one, the other one will. This one will take, I guess.
Wait, Chloe, that's such a good point. If she like keeps getting continuance with this one, or like, why wouldn't she want to do that in the other one? So I agree.
Yeah.
And let's remember, didn't her price go up, like the amount that she makes? So I don't think that it's really in her, you know, I don't think she's like, you know, rushing to get any of this over with, because she's like making pretty good money an hour here. So I don't know, could she be prolonging it? I have no idea. I just think it's wrong either way, and that the families need to grieve. So we need to do this.
I agree. I think that the evidence has been the evidence for a very long time. And a lot of it, you know, like Judge Hippler said, you ask for everything under the sun. You can't complain about the weight of the planets. Mm-hmm. And when much of it is especially irrelevant. Tabby Cat says, whose ID did they find in the sock, in the box? Someone there or someone else he was stalking? You know, I asked Steve once. I asked him this question. I was like, hey, the glove box, the glove inside of the box that had the IDs inside of the glove. What was that about? And he said they asked and they told him that they were not these victims.
Does that mean they were other victims? I guess they would be. If you have a stolen ID, even if he didn't like ever, you know, come in contact with them by stealing an ID, that would still make them a victim. Like, I wonder what they meant by that. Like, I'm parsing.
He said our victims.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Am I parsing words here, and like, or did you hear the same thing?
I heard the same thing. I was like, oh, well, Sounds like he may have burglarized or did something else to somebody else, victimized someone else, which
That wouldn't
according
surprise
to the
me.
Dateline, yeah, according to the Dateline, Nayoung Ko was one of the persons, which I wanted to ask you. So he allegedly breaks into this young lady's apartment and he moves things around. He puts a cake in the microwave and then he lines up her cosmetics on her toilet seat. To me, he's trying to scare her. He, I think he knows that because of his relationship, he's going to find out about this. What does that say that he wanted to scare her? I think he wanted to see that fear.
I think it has to do with power and control, like everything else. So I think this was his way of like inching in a little bit. There's usually like an escalation, and that would be an escalation. So first he does this. And again, if that girl really did like him, let's say she was like giving him an idea. I think she told him that she liked him and he said that he wasn't interested or something like that. So if he knew that she was into him, that might have made him feel more comfortable making her the victim, because he might have felt like she's not going to turn him in or think that it was him type thing. But it also gives him a way to like practice.
Well, she said that it sounded like she was into him, but that he didn't give her the time of day type of thing.
She said that she didn't feel like she was good enough for him. And I remember that part
Right.
specifically because that like broke my heart that she said that. And I'm like, I hope she sees now that she was too good for him. And that's why, you know what I mean? As opposed
Yeah.
to not being good enough.
What about the fact that he may have been watching her? I mean, she didn't know
So I
about
guess
that. She wasn't aware of that.
So this could have been the first time when I meant like escalation. So if he was already surveilling people and then including her, let's say, going into the house, he would have had to go in while she wasn't there. So this could have been the beginning of him just getting comfortable going in homes. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that he even tried to go into the 1122 house at some point. I just wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised because usually you see an escalation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. There's an escalation. And, it starts off with a peeping Tom, then, breaking in, moving things. It's one thing to break into the house and then get out just to feel the thrill of getting in and out. Another thing to move things around. And to somebody that that tells me he wanted to see the fear in her eyes.
Absolutely.
He wanted to see her fear. He
So
wanted to see her scared.
Yeah, if he carved something in Ethan's legs, then that would mean he would, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's safe to say that whoever carved Ethan's legs is a sadist. So that means that you get like, you feel like comfort out of seeing others. So he might have felt, I don't know, the whole thing. I think that whoever did this, we're going to find that he like enjoyed scaring people. Like that made him feel more powerful. Like I have the ability to make you fear for your life type thing. So I think that was like a power and control thing.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I know a lot of people question a lot of the motive aspect and stuff like that. I think it's pretty clear as day. He's just a sick individual who gave in to his demons, as the article said.
I agree. And somebody just pointed out, somebody just made a really good point. So remember when we were saying about him being in law enforcement and stuff like that? That sometimes could be a way of making you feel like by being a police officer, and I don't know this to be true, so maybe you can correct the record if I'm wrong, but when you have on your uniform, do you ever feel like, I don't know, like you're in control? Does that make sense? So not in a bad way, just like I would assume that you would have to in order to like run, like go in the streets and stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely some people who get off on being in law enforcement or the uniform or whatever. There was this one scenario where I went to this call, right, where this guy who was in a different agency, law enforcement, but different agency, and he was a rookie, and he lived in an apartment complex, and this could have been horrible because he lived across the street from from an elementary school, and this was during the summer, so there was nobody at school, but we got a call for shots fired, and it was his house, and he shot around. Now, I walked in there. I was the responding officer, and I get there, and I walk in, and I go to where the shots were fired, and it was in the restroom, into the mirror. And I look at him, I look at the hole, I look at him, and I'm like, man, that's not the right height. And I'm like, so what happened? And he goes, man, I was just getting ready to, I was clearing my weapon. I thought I cleared it. So when you clear your weapon, what you do is you remove the magazine and then you pull back the slide so it ejects the round. If you pull back the slide and eject the round first, then another one goes in, and when you hit the clip, you still have one. And so he claims that that's what he did, and that he dry fired to check it out, and it went off.
Could you
And
imagine?
And I was like, my man, now I know this might be embarrassing, but who dry fires a gun at eye level like this into a mirror? Into a mirror. You were playing. You were doing that. I mean, you got
I agree
excited.
with you. And they say that a lot of people that have guns don't really know how to handle them right. So that could very much be true, that he didn't think that one could have gotten into the chamber, and he was showing
Oh, I
off.
don't think that was at all the situation. He was doing.
That's what I mean. He was
he was
showing
doing
off
that
to
number.
himself in the mirror, like feeling like a tough guy,
Yeah.
and then it goes off because it didn't occur to him to like make sure he cleared it and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think he ever tried to clear it, to be honest with you. I think that was all just a lie. I think he was in uniform. He just gotten hired. He was doing the whole little, quickest draw in the West routine, and he shot the mirror. And instead of, owning up to his mistake, he tried to say it was a lie. And I was like, look, man, I was like, you're, I don't want to say what department, what form of law enforcement he was, but I was like, what's your history? And he told me he was former military as well. And I was like, who taught you to clear a weapon facing it forward? And he's like, no, but I was like, dude, so stop lying to me. No, it was an accident. It doesn't have to be anything big. But the minute you lie to me and you try to tell me that it was something different, and I know it's something different and you're lying to me, that's when it becomes a problem.
Because that's ego.
Right. And then I was like, you're a young guy. Regardless, it happened. You're going to get in trouble for a little bit. Don't make it worse. Just tell me the truth.
Did he ever tell you?
Nah, he couldn't admit it.
Again, that would be.
I thought I almost had him, though.
And then could you imagine he might be like the laughing stock of the force now because Daniel's going to tell it, so like, I'm sure that was a big thing for his ego right there. But that proves my point, right? That there are some people out there that get that sense of ego, like you were saying, practicing it. So there are people out there. Could Bryan or whoever done this? I think that's why we see that a lot of the times there'll be somebody like in law enforcement and stuff like that, because that does give you a feeling of having power and control. Yeah.
The Great Gatsby asks, wouldn't he have had a dummy or some sort of that he practiced knife work on? There was a dog who was skinned. Do you think that he may have done other things?
I don't know. That one I'm not really sure about. I mean, it would go with like who else would have done that type thing in my head, but I don't know that I really know enough about Buddy the dog to say whether I definitely think it was him. However, if we find out that it was him, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh. Like I would be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I don't know enough to say that because it could be somebody else, right? That's also, doing cruelty to animals. That would actually scare me if it was somebody else, because that would mean that there's somebody else out there that's escalating.
Yeah. Hey, you're absolutely right. Extreme Blonde says, I'll be interested to see how often his phone pings were where they were. Grocery stores, shops, schools, homes, etc. I think he stalked. I think he surveilled them for sure. For sure. Well, Miss Dr. Vona, I appreciate you coming on. I hear that
Thank you for having me.
I hear you just passed a couple milestones. I want to say congratulations on your channel and your success. I hope to be a part of it soon.
I thank you. I'm sorry. I think there's a little bit of delay. You guys don't yell at me and say I'm cutting Daniel off. I apologize. I want to thank you because if this wasn't for Daniel, I have to be honest with you guys. Daniel gave me a platform that nobody else did. So, and not that I really I'm not saying that people were not giving me, but I mean, Daniel went out of his way to bring me on the show and to tell people to sub to my channel. So I appreciate you and Steelers fan more than you could ever imagine. And then to your family here that you have, you guys literally are the best family in the internet. So thank you all that have come over to my channel and subbed up, because without you, I would not have been able to make this milestone. So I'm so excited to figure it all out.
That's amazing. Well, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. I'm glad that I found you on the live chat one day and brought you on. I think it's been a great conversation with you and a friendship brewing. Thank you so much, guys. Go check out Dr. Vona's channel. was it Great Minds, Dr. Vona?
The minds behind true crime with Dr.
There
Vona.
you go. It could be Great Minds. That's the
It
same
could be.
thing. Same thing.
Same thing. Thank you
I'm
so
back.
much.
I'm bad with names. There was I don't know if you heard about this, but I started a whole conspiracy because I got the wrong name one time. I called some lady named Kim Pam, and it went nationwide. So I'm bad with names. But
That's okay. I wouldn't have been offended if you call my channel something different. As long as somebody in the chat puts the right one in there. See, there you go. Thank you, Afton. So they put it in there for me. So that's good. You could call it whatever you want.
there you go. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, mods. You guys are the best. Thank you, members. I'm gonna put a link in the members community post right now for the Discord. You'll see that in about 3 seconds, guys. We'll see you guys probably tomorrow. Peace out.
Thank you.